What's going on, guys? K-Pine here, and welcome back. But most importantly, welcome to Season 18 of the GOBattleLeague. And in this video, I'll be featuring two newly buffed Mons in Shadowclaw Feraligatr, which has launched the Shadow and the normal variants up to the number 9 and 18 rankings respectively, as well as Steelwing and Empoleon, boosting the Shadow and normal variants up to 21 and 34 respectively. Empoleon was previously stuck with a high damage fast move of Waterfall, which doesn't generate that much energy, but it now gets the best of both worlds with Steelwing. As for Feraligatr, this Pokemon is an absolute beast now, having access to one of the two best fast moves in the game, in my opinion, combining that with the absolutely busted move of Hydro Cannon, as well as stats similar to that of Swampert, show that this Pokemon really is no joke. As for the Gator's second move, you can use either Crunch or Ice Beam. Personally, I prefer Ice Beam for the coverage, as even in situations where the Crunch would be super effective and Hydro Cannon is neutral, Crunch does only minimally more damage. Plus, when you use it on the safe swap, it's all but guaranteed to get you Switch Advantage or Shield Advantage. And with that, let's check out the newly buffed Feraligatr and Empoleon in the Open GreatLeague. Alright, getting to the first battle, we lead Altaria into normal Drapion. This is a fairly good lead for us just due to our bulk, and it looks like my opponent is staying in and going for that Crunch, fishing for that debuff. We're going to let this go. We don't need to give up a shield yet, as well as just in case our opponent does get the debuff. Now they swap into a Sylveon. A reminder, this is my very first battle of the season. These are rank 1 and early rank battles, so you will see some weird Mons or not as used Mons as you would expect to see as later on in the season in the Open GreatLeague. But with that said, Empoleon comes in showing off that new move of Steelwing, fully farming down the Sylveon and leaving with two moves to threaten the Empoleon with. First Hydro Cannon does get shielded, second one plus the Steelwing wings bring him down to 1 HP, where I will shield up because I will be able to get a Hydro Cannon off against whatever they have in the back, of which is a Hisuian Arcanine. This is double super effective damage right here. This will absolutely destroy an entire herd of Hisuian Arcanine, so they commit the shield. But at this point, this battle is over because I can bring in Feraligatr, 5 Shadow Claws to the Hydro Cannon. We do end up losing CMP tie. I will commit the shield just in case it is something absolutely wild that the Hisuian Arcanine is throwing, as well as so we can land this Hydro Cannon and get it off to take out the Arcanine. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Altaria into Jellicent. If this Jellicent's running Ice Beam, that's a pretty big core breaker for our team, but majority are running Shadow Ball, so we're going to stay in, we're going to let it go, call it's the Shadow Ball, of which it is, and now we're in a pretty decent position here. We can farm up on energy, go for the Sky Attack, build up to threaten the Moonblast, and bait with the Sky Attack, potentially get the shield. Opponent calls the bait, so very nice call by them, but now they're just going straight for a Surf right here against Altaria, or a Bubble Beam, which is even better, because now I can bring in my Feraligatr and get the Shadow Claw down, as well as bring in a Vigoroth. And this is the point of besides getting that shield or switch advantage of the Feraligatr safe swap, is as well baiting out potential fighters that the Empoleon doesn't want to see, like a Vigoroth, like a Scrafty, or other dark types for that matter. Because we are on Shadow Claw, and they'll see that the Shadow Claw is double resisted. So we do bait out that Vigoroth. Shadow Feraligatr got the shield, as well as baited out the Vigoroth, so it did its job. We're content letting it go. My opponent makes a very nice catch of the Moonblast onto the Bastiodon there, but all that allows me to do is just load up on a ton of energy for the Empoleon. I can shield once, throw 4 more Steel Wings, and then the Hydro Cannon for good timing. This won't quite take out the Bastiodon yet, but what I can do is I can build up to the back-to-back moves. Instead, I decide to shield twice, go for the farm down, just not able to get it, but either way, this game is over. As I can shield up the move from the Bastiodon, go for this Hydro Cannon, which will get the shield from my opponent doesn't have any shields left. The Hydro Cannon will land. We can let this go as everything the Vigoroth throws, the body slam, or the rock slide will be resisted, and we will survive it, as well as get off the second Hydro Cannon. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Altaria into Toxapex. Pretty good lead for us here, as my opponent swaps into a Bastiodon. And now, while you may think that the better counter swap here is the Empoleon, you would be right. But I'm reading that it's potentially something weak to another water type in the back, and they're trying to bait it out with the Bastiodon. Now, if this is a G-Fisk in the back, then I did make the wrong swap here. But if it's anything else that would be weak to counter, then I made the correct swap. But the good news here is that because of that 5 Shadow Claw to Hydro Cannon pacing, the Feraligatr is able to still get off 3 Hydro Cannons against the Bastiodon. Now, we're up 1 shield to 0. I'm okay with that because the Toxapex has a terrible matchup against either of the Pokemon in the back. So I'd still rather use that to get energy an energy head start on my Empoleon, where Hydro Cannons would absolutely threaten my opponent. And it ends up being a Dugong in the back. So it turns out we did make the right swap of bringing our Shadow Feraligatr into the Bastiodon right there. I let the move go, knowing that I can survive one from the Dugong anyways, calling this an Icy Wind. They went for the drill run. That's fine either way. As long as I throw on good timing, my opponent will not be able to make the catch of the move. So we can store that energy, bring back in our Altaria, and save our shield for the Empoleon, which will be able to close out this match comfortably. We're going to go for the Sky Attack as soon as we get there. We don't want them potentially reaching another move to take out our Altaria. Down goes the Toxapex. Dugong does get 2 more Ice Shards against my Altaria, but we can just build up to the back-to-back moves, and this game is over. We don't even need the back-to-back moves because even a debuffed Drill Peck at this point will take out the Dugong. As you'll see, the Drill Peck comes through and the Dugong goes down. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Altaria into Lapras. Terrible lead for us. We're going to swap into our Feraligatr, and it seems like that's actually a Frost Breath Lapras. So again, rank 1 battles, or first day I should say at this point, you are going to face some pretty weird movesets. In comes Altaria. We build up to the Ice Beam and we bait with the Hydro Cannon. The Shadow Ice Beam is so threatening of that one shot to the Altaria that they are forced to give up a shield. And I'm building up energy, see if I'll be able to bait a Hydro Cannon as well as make it to another Ice Beam, but I'm not able to. So I'm going to guarantee that second shield from the opponent by full sending the Ice Beam right there, which they do respect. With that said, my opponent is now completely out of shields. Feraligatr doing what Feraligatr does. We bring in Altaria, we call the Sky Attack bait, and now we're able to get the Dragon Breath all the way down. Even if they went for the Moonblast there, I was planning on leaving all the last shields for my Empoleon, of which they have a Lucario in the back. Those counters are absolutely shredding through my Lucario, but we're in a good spot either way, as that Hydro Cannon does massive damage to Lucario. I will shield up, as since Lucario has no bulk and is all attack, even a power-up punch will do more damage than a Surf from the Lapras. So Surf does land, we make it to the Drill Peck, and right here my opponent will just be able to get the farm down of my Empoleon, which is very unfortunate, but we have the move stored on my Altaria to take out the Lapras either way. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Altaria into Skarmory. We're going to save swap into our Shadow Feraligatr right away, as we do have a better response in our Empoleon in the back, and my opponent save swaps or counter swaps into their Venusaur, of which they were a little slow on. And here's one instance why I love having Ice Beam on the Feraligatr instead of Crunch, where if your opponent allows you to get a 2 Shadow Claw head start before coming in with their Venu, you can guarantee both shields or switch from your opponent by going straight Ice Beam. And yes, that's a water type against a grass type. In this instance, my opponent tries to go for the Vine Whip down, but they get punished heavy by having to give up 2 shields to my 0. So I can just bring in Altaria to absorb this damage. We bait out the grass type. I'm perfectly okay letting my Altaria go down here. Try and get the Dragon Breath down, just not able to, but that's okay. I'm going to let my Empoleon get an energy head start instead and hope that with 2 shields, it is something my Empoleon can handle in the back. I have to take a look, and it's a Swampert, and this is going to be a very close endgame. If this was a Shadow Swampert, or a Shadow Empoleon for that matter, this game would be an instant win for me, but because they are both normal, this is going to be very, very close. This Hydro Cannon will land, and from here, I have to try and commit to a Steel Wing down. I will commit a shield. This is a potential mistake. I decided to commit both shields to the Hydro Cannon. First off, I go for the Hydro Cannon right there because I would win CMP tie over the Swampert to their next Hydro Cannon. But that was a mistake. I should have just gone for the farm down or saved a shield for the Skarmory, because a Hydro Cannon does more than a Sky Attack, but it does less than a Brave Bird. So my opponent could just freely go for the Brave Bird to knock out my Empoleon, where if I just committed to that farm down and over farming or took a Hydro Cannon, I feel like I might have been able to survive. But anyways, GG's to my opponent, well played to them. Next battle, Charjabug Lead. This is exactly where we want to see the Charjabug, away from our water types. And they're going to be going for this discharge after 4 Volt Switches. So we're going to make sure to throw on good timing with this Sky Attack. Unfortunately, it wasn't good timing. I accidentally threw 8 Dragon Breaths and then the move instead of 7. So we do lose CMP tie. But the good news here is that we survive that discharge anyways, and my opponent commits a shield. So it ends up working out for us in the end as we reach this next Sky Attack, which will force the final shield for my opponent if they want to save this energy on the Charjabug, which they do. So now I'm going to hard swap into my Feraligatr, get an energy head start, shield up the discharges, get the Shadow Claw down, and now with a 1 shield advantage and a banked Hydro Cannon, even against an Azumarill, this is going to be a pretty good matchup for the Feraligatr. Make sure to throw 4 Shadow Claws and then the Hydro Cannon for good timing against a 3-turn user. As you can see there, Shadow Feraligatr against Azumarill with the Shadow Claws damage, this almost knocks out the Azumarill, brings it very, very deep into the red. So even with the shield advantage, we are okay. But because they're so low, we predict they're going to throw right away. We catch that energy onto our Azumarill, and in the back, they have their own Feraligatr, so this game is over. My Feraligatr, which is its 4th Hydro Cannon of the match, make that number 5 as well. Feraligatr putting in so much energy. This Pokemon, if you don't have one, do yourself a favor. Build that Shadow. It is so, so good, as 1 more Steel Wing from the Empoleon will take care of the Azumarill. GG's. Altaria into Lanturn. Exactly where we want to see the electric type, just like the Charjabug last match. And I know I've said it a lot. Shadow Feraligatr is just an absolute beast. Please do not sleep on it. Either have one on your team, or at least make sure your team can deal with one, as well as have a game plan going up against it. Skarmory safe swap. We're going to counter swap with our Empoleon, but make sure you do not throw your move first. Let them throw their move first, because if they go for the Brave Bird, your Hydro Cannon will now one-shot, and if they go for the Sky Attack, you will just go double Hydro Cannon before they reach 2 moves. But if you go for the Hydro Cannon first, that then allows them to freely go for the Brave Bird, of which you'll then have to throw another Hydro Cannon after that. Surprisingly enough, my opponent does commit the shield to that Hydro Cannon. Not sure if what they were expecting from the Empoleon there. And we do fall just short from the second Hydro Cannon, but that's okay, because we can bring in our Altaria, land that Moonblast, as well as tank the Thunderbolt, and now bring in my own Altaria here against a Water Gun Swampert. Quite an interesting pick from my opponent, as we do end up losing the CMP tie, but that is okay, because we just commit a shield, get the final shield for my opponent, and from here, Feraligatr will be able to close the game out for us. Use the over farm just enough before the Swampert reaches their next move. Hydro Cannon does land, and we are able to reach one final Hydro Cannon to take out the Lanturn for a good game. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Altaria into Trevenant. Pretty good lead for us here. See what my opponent wants to do. They swap into a Walrein. It's not a Powder Snow Walrein, but a Frost Breath Walrein. So honestly, in this matchup, it doesn't really make a difference if it's a Powder Snow Walrein or a Frost Breath Walrein, just because they will be able to reach an Earthquake regardless, forcing a shield from me. So makes a little bit better of a matchup, but like I said, really not much of a difference at all, as we do get the Steel Wing down. In comes the Trevenant, going for Drill Peck number 1. And here, they're going to have to give up both of their shields, because this Drill Peck does a lot of damage to my opponent. So they do give up both of their shields. They're not going to be able to get the Shadow Claw farm down, so they do end up settling for the Seed Bomb instead. Empoleon did its job. We're going to let it go, bring in our Altaria, and just commit to these Dragon Breaths here, where they have a G-Fisk in the back. We are going to fire off our Hydro Cannon right away to offset the turn of lag that came in from swapping. And my opponent doesn't even build up that to the Earthquake. They want to throw the Rock Slide right away, so we can no-shield that. Double up to the one before the double moves to outpace the Trevenant, so the Hydro Cannon KOs the G-Fisk as well as the opposing Trevenant. GG's to my opponent. Next battle, we lead Altaria against Bastiodon. Atrocious lead, we know what to do. We're going to swap into that Feraligatr. My opponent's going to throw 2 Smackdowns, then bring in a Shadow Vic. And oh boy, do you think the Shadow Vic knows about Ice Beam? I don't think it knows about Ice Beam. One-shots the Shadow Vic, and just like that, the Shadow Feraligatr has gotten switch advantage. We can now put our Empoleon onto the Bastiodon and Altaria onto whatever is in the back. Hopefully it's not the Wigglytuff, but if it is the Wigglytuff, Empoleon will be able to sweep here. I commit the shields to respect the Flamethrower. Strangely enough, they go for a Stone Edge. Flamethrower does hit for neutral in these situations, but either way, I want to preserve health on my Empoleon in case it is that Wigglytuff, just because the Altaria would be kind of useless at that point. But it's not. It ends up being a Medicham, and from here, we are a little bit slow on our reaction time to the Altaria, so because of that, Medicham is going to outpace to 3 Ice Punches before we reach 2 Sky Attacks, and that's quite unfortunate in this matchup. Also, throw on the CMP tie here. A little bit unfortunate timing by me again. Good news is I was planning on shielding that move anyways, but say I didn't have any shields left, then there goes all win conditions possible. As you'll see, the Medicham's just barely able to outpace us, reach the Ice Punch to take us out, and from here, I've got to commit to the Steel Wing down. I know the Bastiodon is very close to a move, so I've got to commit to the Steel Wing down, and it looks like I'm just going to be able to get it because I will survive that counter. But my opponent makes a brilliant play right here. They swap the Bastiodon to get that Smackdown's worth of damage, so instead of me farming down the Medi and having the Hydro Cannon for the Basti, they now put me in counter range, so it's a Simul instead. Very well played to my opponent. GG's. Next battle, Shadow Dragonite Lead. We're going to count to 12 Dragon Breaths, then swap into our Empoleon to catch the Dragon Claw where it is resisted. And now my opponent swaps into a Gastrodon. Empoleon's getting absolutely shredded by those Mud Slaps. I thought we left this matchup in the Sinnoh or Hisui Cup, but apparently not. It's back into the open GreatLeague as my opponent brings the Empoleon Tech. They do end up giving up a shield to the Hydro Cannon, which is very nice. Fortunate for us, because here, my Altaria isn't quite in double Body Slam range yet. So Body Slam 1 will land, and Body Slam 2 will land, and we'll be able to survive the Mud Slap afterwards to reach this Moonblast to take out the Gastrodon, unless they want to give up their final shield. They do not want to give up their final shield, and the Moonblast actually does not KO the Gastrodon, and we get a 1 Shadow Claw head start, and it ends up being a Vigoroth in the back. So this is going to be a very, very close end game. just from fast move pressure alone from my opponent to me. So I have to manage my energy very, very, very carefully here. My opponent instead decides to save the shield for the Shadow Dragonite, so we aren't going to throw our move. We're going to commit to the Shadow Claw down, and our Shadow Feraligatr survives with 1 HP. Very close game right there. GG's to my opponent. As you can see from these battles, Feraligatr and Empoleon are definitely two new meta threats to watch out for. While Empoleon is very strong, it has a weird place in the meta currently just because it has some very hard wins, but also some very hard losses in common picks such as Whiscash and counter users like Annihilate. So while it will see some play where you should be prepared for it, I don't think it will be all over until the meta sees some sort of shift, but it will see a lot of play in other weekly limited metas. As for Shadow Feraligatr, if you have one, build it now. If you don't, I'd make it your top priority to get when Shadow Totodile comes back to Rocket Grunts, as this thing is good. I also want to point out that I feel like this team, or some variation of it, might actually catch a lot of steam, where if you want fighting coverage, you'll probably want to stick with something that covers that as well as grass types like Altaria you see here, but if you want more electric coverage, then I'd recommend something like Shadow Dinair or even Guzzlord on the lead, but then I'd recommend swapping Empoleon out for something like Whiscash or Lanturn. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching, I really do appreciate you. If you enjoyed it, please drop a like, subscribe, and comment down below. Love to hear what you have to say, and with that, I'll catch you in the next one.